Hello, this is your introductory tutorial for Premiere for the IMP training. I'm Tina LeBaron, and let's go ahead and get started. When you open and edit in Premiere, it'll look like this. You'll have video tracks and sound tracks, and you have how many video tracks are set up here. This would have 3. And then you have how many audio tracks are set down here. These are all options you can adjust when you make a new project. When you start Premiere, it might look more like this. If you're on the Learn screen, it has tutorials as well, and all of these are available online, so if you ever wanted to assign your students homework or extra help, they don't even need to have Premiere installed, just like any other Adobe program. You could go ahead and search Adobe Premiere tutorials, and these same videos will be there. They just won't be able to follow along with them as easily. They do tend to cover most of the basics of what is on the certification as well. So I do tell my students watch these if they want to review or if they feel like they need extra help. In Home, it might show your most recent projects. You can click on what you've worked there. If you want to start a new project, you can go to New Project. It'll open up this import dialog. It's connected to my personal Adobe account, so I apologize. You can go through and set your project location here. Your project name would go here. So if I was like IMP tutorial, or what we're going to do today is make a video of your game capture. We already did the first part, hopefully in OBS. So you could call it like game video, whatever you want, set where you want it to save, and then create. I'm going to use the one I have previously because for me, these are my IMP tutorials. So let me go ahead, go back home, and click on my IMP tutorials. That's interesting. Let me go back to editing. It was having a little bit of a freezing issue, which tends to happen when it runs OBS at the same time, so we'll see how it goes. You might not have anything here because you won't have any timeline or sequences started, and you probably won't have anything here. If I were to delete this folder, it would say import media to start. That's where it is. If I ever accidentally delete anything, I can also Control-Z, it will come back. This is a compositing program, which means you'll import all of the materials over here in your project, put them together in a timeline, but it's using pointer files. So it's not copying the file over and then it's permanently in your area. If this gets deleted, or let's say I went to this OBS tutorial or anywhere I had these files saved to from where I imported them and I deleted that, it would be gone. So make sure your students understand the importance of file management before they start in Premiere, because it's really easy to lose a Premiere project. The other thing is, because it uses pointer files, they can't submit the Premiere project. You have to export the video. So to import, we can either right-click and go to Import, or we can go to File and Import from here as well. I think technically you can click here and go to Import as well. And you can also go to the media browser and find your stuff here. There's a lot of ways to get your footage. But I think for certification tests, it's either here or File, Import. And then you can go to your folders. And I'm going to click, I think these 2 videos right here are what I made for this demonstration. If I wanted to put these in folders, if I had a bunch of different items I was working on, I could make a folder. In Premiere, it's called a bin. It's called a bin because in film, we used to put film in kind of a trash bin. It would be film strips in a bin, and then you would edit them. Some of them looked pretty neat. Some of them literally were like a trash can with things stapled over them. It's also where the razor blade tool comes from. If you went to like an old Steenbeck, you'd actually cut them with a razor blade. So we can bring our clips in. If we want to start a new bin, we can right-click and go to New Bin. If I wanted to call this Premiere Tutorials, I could, and drag my clips over there. I will tell you, my students tend to not prefer folders. They may use them, they might not. This is the list view. Chances are yours might look more like this. And the reason that happens is because you have an icon view and you have a list view, and you can switch back and forth from there. You can also drag this to make the icons or the list bigger or smaller. To start a new clip, it tells you to drop media here to create sequence, and if you know these clips are the right size, or you're only using things that are this size, you can do that. You can just click and drag your clip over. If you know you wanted a certain size though, especially if you're compositing a bunch of different items, it's probably better to start a new sequence where you know the settings. And you can do File, New, Sequence. At least a lot of my students think it's in the sequence dropdown, but that's only the settings after you've made the sequence. So you go to New, Sequence, and you'll get this setting. Depending on how you filmed it or how you made it, there should be a sequence preset. You can also make it from settings. I tend to use some old digital SLRs to film in my classroom, so I generally leave it to this. Remember, it's your 1080p. It's going to say right here what your frame size is. This is 1920 by 1080. It's progressive, so that's our P, and then it's 30, which means our frame rate is 29.97. We know from NTSC, which is our North American standard, our frame rate is 30 or 29.97. For PAL, which is a European standard, it is 25, and for film, it's 24. A lot of my students want to use 24, and then sometimes it'll look a little choppy because it does a conversion when they upload it online. So I just start with 30 and say we can always convert it or slow it down if they decide to. You can name your sequence here. If I want Premiere Beginner, I think that's what this one is called. And we can go to our settings to change any of those options as well. If we want more or less tracks, we can set that here. For instance, maybe I only want 2 video tracks. You can always take these out or add more once we get the project started. And audio, to get another track, you hit the add track, but you can't hit subtract. You have to click on the audio track you want to go away, hitting the checkbox, and then hit delete track. And now we have our sequence. I can just drag my clips over, but I know, for instance, these are going to need some editing, and I don't want to use all of them. So I can also double click on the clip, and I'll see it in my source window. Using my current time indicator, which is what they call this thing, you can go to whichever clip you want and hit a mark in for where you want it to start. And then maybe this is where I wanted it to end, so I could hit my mark out. Rather than go through and edit it before, I can do that. I've also got a couple other settings here I can do. For instance, I know that my daughter is going to come in halfway through this video and ask about lunch, so maybe I don't want the audio. I'm going to replace the audio for it, maybe put music under. If I wanted video, I could click and drag just video only. I'm going to keep existing settings because I'm going to zoom into this anyway. I can click and drag right here. That'll get my audio only. I'll show you another way to get audio out as well. If I had a clip here already, let's just say this one was here, and I wanted everything to scoot over, I could select Insert. What this will do is insert the clip wherever current time indicator is, and then it will just push the rest of the clips to the right. That's what the icon is actually showing. It's a little arrow going right. If I wanted this to replace this clip, I could use the override, and it would override the clip. I can also go to a frame, maybe I want a picture of this, and click Export Frame. This will allow me to export any single frame from my timeline or from my video. And then if I want it in the project, if I want to use it, maybe I want to freeze frame, I want to use it as a title, I can just click Import into Project and hit OK. And that'll make a freeze frame with that part. You don't see it because it probably ended up here, so I could click and drag it into my Premiere tutorial because it will make it in the main project area. Let's say I liked this initial audio I had, but I want to get rid of the rest. I could drag my timer right after that ends, and if it's hard to see, you can select these circles. Dragging in will zoom in on the timeline, dragging out will zoom out on the timeline. So I could put this here, cut, and then right-clicking on the clip, I can unlink. What that'll do is say that, okay, here the audio and the video are going to stay linked, they're lined up, but over here they act as two separate objects. And I could select that and delete. If I wanted to zoom into this, I can click on the clip and just zoom in. I can click to move it around. But if I wanted to make sure that it was staying centered to the screen, I could also double click on the clip in here, either way, whichever clip I want to adjust, and go to Effect Controls. From here, I can scale up. You'll see it if the current time indicator is over it. So let's say I want it there. And I can also change the position of it. So I can drag up and down on the Y and back and forth on the Z. If I wanted to keep these two clips lined up so that they're similar, I can remember my numbers, 230 and 905. I normally write them down, to be honest, but try it. I can go back to my effects controls, do 230. We can always manually type in a blue area, and 905. And now these two should be lined up, and they are. Sweet. This is also where I can change things like the opacity. Opacity, set it to a 0%, and then put it up to 100, and we've manually made a fade in. You can also, let's say I wanted a title here before, I can click and move these keyframes, leaving enough black space to put in a title. I could use the type tool and just click. And maybe this is, I'll call it landscape demonstration. And if I want to have more options to edit this, I can go to my window, workspace, go to graphics and captions, or I could just add the window as well. Text, I would just click text and it would add that. The settings are also all in here as well. Once I click, you can see text settings here. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to the window, graphics and captions, because I want you to see that they also have a lot of pre-made effects that you could use as well. If the students wanted a your title here, they can drag it above. If I don't have a track there, I can just click and drag it. It will automatically add a new track. And maybe instead of having this landscape demonstration here, I want to go ahead and go to this your title here, where it says your title here. I can go ahead and edit. So if I were to isolate that track and see it, now it'll look like that. Accidentally added an E. That's what you get for having the dyslexic teacher today, sorry. So you have some pretty nice pre-made effects. The only thing is all the student projects tend to get a little samey if you don't find some reason for them to vary, because they normally go through the first 10 and then stop. At least mine do, I don't know about yours. And if we wanted to manually edit a title, we could show it again and go to this edit menu. You'll see a lot of different features. I double click so it's selected. You can set up your own styles. You can change the font here. We can have the size set over here. And if we wanted 2 lines, we could hit enter. You can change the centering. And if you want to change the position, you can either just always click and drag it, or you can click on these numbers and drag. And there are alignment options as well. If I wanted it centered, I could do that. So I can adjust the stroke. I just need to have it highlighted. I click the stroke color. and then I can drag in and out to see the colors. We'll zoom out. It's pretty gross right now, to be honest. But we will change that stroke color to black so it's a little easier to see what's going on. And then you can click and drag that to be bigger or smaller. You can change the spacing between the letters, and you can actually animate that as well. Also, this will be the distance between the lines. I just click and drag it to see what it looks like. And I can also do things like if I wanted this to be the subscript of one. In this area, it doesn't make much sense, but if you're doing something like maybe a science video for one of your other departments in your school, then this is pretty helpful to do. You can do a demonstration, add it there. We can do a all cap, and let's go ahead and select all of them. We can turn off any effect we don't want too. So we could do drop caps, we do all caps, or if we click off, it'll reset to how it was before. So you can experiment with that as well. Of course, some of you are used to cutting on the timeline too. So if I wanted this to be smaller, I could click the arrows and click and drag. If I wanted to just cut it, if I was used to that, I could click the razor blade tool, which I think is shortcut key C. And then I can go back to my select tool, which is shortcut key V, hit delete. This has been the introductory lesson, or the beginner lesson for Premiere for IMP. I hope it helped.